Thank you for joining us, Frenchie. My name's Chris Canturi on behalf of March and Ash. It's great to talk to you here.
Thanks. It's nice to be with you guys. I really appreciate the support. Huh?
Yeah, there's a lot of excitement about having your brand affiliated and part of March and Ash now. Can you tell us how it all started? How did it come together? How much time do we have, right?
uh, it's like for me, I when I was a kid, I really wanted to travel. That's all I could dream of. And then when I became a teenager, I had kind of forgotten my kid's dream, and I was facing life.
Right.
And it looks like a life sentence to me. It scared me. And at that time, I was 17, I smoked my first joint. And it was like tasting and smelling all those country I was reading about and all the adventure. It brought back everything into awareness, and I traveled for 18 years. From as soon as I was 18, I traveled for 18 years. I didn't even go back to France. I just dedicated my life to traveling. And during that time, every year I would spend 3, 4 months deep in a producing region, in a producing country to make my stash for the year. I didn't go there to sit at the feet of the master to learn the trade.
Right.
I was there to really make my own stash, but by working alongside the local and living months within the family and stuff, well, they were actually my teacher. I didn't know better at that time, but so for 18 years, that was my life, where I had no responsibility whatsoever. I just traveled. So
Yeah.
and then I became a dad for 20 years. And my life became, I was a straight person. I smoked, but only my dealer and my wife knew that I was smoking, basically. I would deny it, doesn't matter how much I reeked weed.
Right.
And then my daughter left the house and I started to grow my own. Then I started to do some sieving from my trim. And I realized that ash was something like not really known here.
Yeah.
And I had my wife had me study a lot of hashish book because I didn't know how much I knew. You know what
Right.
I mean? It's like until somebody asks you how much you know compared to something you don't really know and care
True.
to a certain point.
Yeah.
And I became involved with the industry, specifically in the Emerald Triangle with a farmer of the Emerald Triangle, and then it became it became a dedication. As much as making quality ash is important, protecting the farmers that give me that quality is majorly important.
Yeah. And how did the Frenchie Cannoli brand actually come to be? Just as itself, just as a brand, Frenchie Cannoli. It's such an amazing name.
So my name is hard to pick up, Camille. Every time I have to spell it, and then there is a story. It's a name that is used for woman, for name. It's like there is a 15-minute talk about a name, and everybody call me Frenchie.
Frenchie.
Okay, and at that time I was drying in a room, so I was never really 101% sure of my drying, and I would roll my pancake into a cannoli, loose cannoli, to have an airflow, and I would burp my cannoli like flour.
Okay.
And my roots are Italian, and with Subcool, actually, the one is like when he saw the cannoli, he really laughed his head off. He always called me Frenchie. And
Oh,
I
I
said,
love a good cannoli, my friend. It's hard to find a good cannoli in Southern California, I'll tell you.
Frenchie cannoli, everybody could understand I was French. It's hard to miss anyway. And cannoli, it's my background,
I love it.
You know what I mean? It was a pretty badass nom de guerre. And
Yeah,
it's
that's what I had to laugh because my last name being Cantori, throughout my life I've been called Chris Cannoli. So when I Frenchy Cannoli, that's too perfect, my friend. Now tell me, someone here who doesn't know much about the process of hash and making hash, can you tell us about this old world press style? And pardon my ignorance here, but really, why is your process so unique and perfect, if you will?
I mean, it's not unique. It's just I make only traditional hash, but I use custom design tool. I use high tech to have the same result. Hash is the plant produce excroissance, protuberance on a flower and on a leaf that create what is called secondary metabolite inside.
Okay.
And the plant kingdom produced 200,000 of them, from the most beneficial to the most toxic compound and everything in between. The cannabis plant can biosynthesize terpene and phenol, the two most common compounds in the plant kingdom that are both toxic, by the way, and make 150 plus medicinal compounds. So people could figure out that the power of medicine and psychoactivity is inside the gland that they couldn't see.
Okay.
That gland is attached to a stalk. You need to detach the gland from the stalk. And one of the most ancient technique is dry sieving. Otherwise, it's sticking it on your bare hand. And dry sieving, at the same time that you detach that gland from the stalk, it fall on your tool on a sieve it's made of perforation, so you can separate per size and separate contaminants from the gland. It's a craft that is most certainly 10 millennium old, as old as agriculture.
Right.
Sieving technology, sieving is much older than agriculture. So we don't really know when making hashish started. The first was sticking it on your bare hand.
That's
And then
amazing.
to be able to make hash, not only you need a tool, but the oldest piece of woven material is 28,000 years old, and it's really super fine. So the potential for the tool is really old. But then you need also a kind of semi-sedentary life. You need to dry the stuff. You need to store the material while you dry, and you need to sieve most certainly in the winter. So you're staying in a place for a while. You know what I mean?
Sure.
You need at least a semi-sedentary life. And what is amazing is like that they figure it out, but there is no evidence of cannabis resin until 3,000 years ago. When you think that the plant was 6 million years ago in Europe, and the first genus Homo came 4 million years later, the chance of a contact between the genus Homo and the plant is basically 2 million years old.
It's amazing.
The oldest evidence of humanity in China, it's 2.1 million years old. It's right next to the birthplace of cannabis.
So do you see a balance between this old world style that you speak of and the newer styles of extracting that are out today? That's what I was referring to as unique earlier.
Okay. So if you take a comparison with alcohol beverage, okay, I'm making wine. I crush the fruit together into a mass. That means that in my mass of resin, there is a matrix that created the terpene and the cannabinoid. And that resin with the terpene is corrosive, and there is a chemical reaction happening, and there is a transformation. That means that hashish is the wholeness of the gland transformed into something different, and a different product. When you take the resin out of the gland, it's like taking the juice from the grape. You can make many, many alcohol up to the 90.9% pure, but you cannot make wine if you don't put chemicals that mimic the skin and the flesh of the fruit, and it wouldn't be as good. So rosin and BHO extract or all the extract, it's refining a product. But when you take the juice from the matrix, when you drink an apple juice and you eat an apple, it's two very, very, very different experience. When you smoke the ash and you smoke the rosin from the ash, it's exactly the same. The ash is a super comfortable, warm feeling, fireplace, cozy. You know what I mean? That little bubble of well-beingness that lasts a long time.
Sure.
Rosin made from the same ash, it bang you, it's super speedy and short.
Yeah.
I do like it. I dab rosin in the afternoon instead of drinking coffee, for example. You know what I mean?
Socks you right between the eyes.
I'd rather have the fullness of the product than just the juice. It's personal.
Of course.
But the problem in our industry, still comparing to the booze industry, you will never compare wine to any alcohol. You would never compare whiskey to tequila, to cognac. You know what I mean?
It's in its own class.
In our industry, in the concentrate industry, there is so much competition that we lose respect and the love for diversity that we find in a resin. It's like, it's not because the guy is doing BHO and I'm making ash and you're doing rosin that we can compare. It's three different products. But can't you appreciate the craft of the dude that does that, even if you like your product better? Some people like whiskey better, but they can drink a cognac and appreciate it and respect it. You know what I mean?
Of course.
It's a question of respect for the craft of others, and we don't have that. There is so much competition in our industry. It's sad.
Yeah. And people taking shortcuts and not really thinking about the big picture like yourself. Mm-hmm. Now, let me ask you, you mentioned when we first signed on that you've obviously had a long history with the plant and with hash. I'm curious how the taste and the effect has evolved over the years from your perspective.
Well, when I was young, I had 6 flavors in my life. Morocco, Lebanon, Turkey, Middle East. We hardly had anything coming from Iran, Iraq. It was mostly Turkey. Then you had Paki, Afghani, India, Nepal. That's it.
That was it.
That was it. So even when you go in a producing country, it's a land race. Everybody grows the same. There is variation in the quality of the product, so that in an amount of terpene retained and stuff like that. But the signature terpene profile, you know, a Morocco, from a Lebanese, you know, and it's obvious.
Sure.
Here, with all the diversity you have, every time I work with a new strain, it's like stepping in a new producing country, literally. You know what I mean? It's like, it's
amazing.
Oh la la, the experience I've had in the Emerald Triangle, touching all those genetics, it's unreal. It's
it's like a kid in a candy store, Willy Wonka.
Yeah, very much so.
And speaking of that diversity, tell us about the strains that are available at March and Ash. You put so many unique characteristics into your strains and into your flavor. You know, I know you have 6 different Frenchy Cannoli hashish products right now, correct, at March and Ash?
Yeah. So it's like some of them, it's pretty much what's popular lately, because For me to be able to have the Emerald Triangle farmer producing their own flowers, it's difficult because there is not that, they need that insurance that they're going to be able to move their stuff.
Sure.
But at the same time, see, we all do the same. What makes the big difference with them, it's regenerative farming and the microclimate of the farm.
Right.
And the dedication that goes into it. So it's like it changes the quality. I have my best farmer, a year where everything was great in his life. The plant, the resin was amazing. The year after, when he was breaking up with his girlfriend, it sucks. But I swear to God,
Right.
it's like the difference
That fast. Yeah.
huge. So the impact of the farmer behind the qualities that I make is huge.
Is
When
that
I
profound?
travel in India, when I travel in Pakistan, in Nepal, in Morocco, nobody cares very much that I did the ash. What everybody wanted to know, where did I go to make the ash?
Yeah.
In a mountain in India, if you make your charas at 1,000 feet, it's good. If you go at 10,000, well, it's great.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And
Sure.
that's the difference.
It's different.
It's like when I came to America, when I came to California, it's the same for me. California, it's a producing country. I mean, it's the fifth economic power after all. And the producing region was the Emerald Triangle. Well, I went deep in the middle to be able to get what I need to make the quality I seek all my life, basically. And for me to be able to share my stash, it's crazy good. It's amazing because in those producing country, it would take me 3-4 months to make my 3-4 kilo for the year.
Right.
You know what I mean? Here I can make that in, and I would never, ever even have dreamed that I could sell my stash.
Sure. And your stash
To be
is
able to do it to that level, it's a really, really, really nice feeling.
And speaking of your stash, I'm looking at the products here and blueberry muffin, peanut butter breath, mimosa, peanut butter sundae, OG twist. I mean, this is amazing.
It is.
And
it was fun.
Tell us about the different ways, now that we've introduced people to your products and the process, what are the different ways that people can consume your wide spectrum hashish?
So all the hash, I call it wide spectrum because I don't separate the per size. Everything is 45 to 160. So that you have 70 to 90 is a little slice of a wall. I prefer to have like that wall impact because it's psychoactivity and it's medicinal at the same time.
Sure.
So just a little bit of it doesn't fly for me. You can smoke it mixed up with flour in a spliff. You can put it on top of a bowl. You can smoke it with a puffco at a low temp, works super well. You can dab it at low temp. I use personally a 3-hole bowl. My really favorite is a 3-hole bowl. Instead of it's like a flower bowl, but instead of having the hole in the middle, you have 3 holes on the edge, on the top.
Sure.
And the bowl is like a little curve like that. So I put the little bowl of ash there, and I use a little herb iron to light it up.
What about people who want to consume but don't want to smoke? Are there ways to consume your product that way without smoking?
Eating hashish, it's an amazing medicine.
Eating it, just straight eating it.
Yeah, straight eating it, or using spices to mix with the ash.
Ooh.
To get where you want. It's like I ate ash as soon as I started to smoke when I was a kid. My, when the elite of the French literature, and I was big in reading, were part of the club of Hashishin and were eating hashish. When I started to smoke, and Baudelaire and Dumas and Victor Hugo were like everything for me. I thought if they eat ash, it must be good. I have to do it too. And so I ate ash as long as I have been smoking ash. And when I was a kid, I had a mix where I put the ash in some alcohol overnight. And then the following day, we would mix it up with a strong coffee, sugar, and a dollop of cream. I didn't know nothing about decarb
That's
or
amazing.
anything like that, but it was strong. And lately, I brought that back during the quarantine. But I
Yeah.
also made a few recipes of traditional Indian bang with the spices. And dude, it changed everything. It enhanced the experience to a level. So now I've been studying a little bit the terpene, and there is a way to eat a little bit of ash and using pepper, vanilla, cardamom, and such to create different experience.
Yeah, I've got friends who are in bands who can't smoke because it affects their voices when they're singing, and that's the things you're speaking of is exactly what they do. They start with coffee or tea in the morning and then integrate it in their food throughout the day. Same exact experience.
But it's a different buzz also.
It is. It's more body consuming, correct? Not as
Depends.
heady.
It's like it's body consuming because you all decarb for hours.
Right.
And then you cook again. I mean, there is a lot of CBN at the end of the day when you do that.
Gotcha.
I don't decarb, and I eat my stuff in the morning.
Yeah.
And it make me. It's a type of buzz where you don't really know you're stoned.
Right.
Until you're spacing out on something and you catch yourself and like, oh wow, you know what I mean?
Very well.
It's all giggly and a little bit speedy. I mean, I need to do stuff during the day.
That's hilarious.
But this is the foundation of my bubble, kind of.
Sure.
It's like that dose in the morning that stabilize everything for me. Like,
yeah. And what's coming in the future for Frenchy Cannoli? What's on the way or what's on the horizon?
I'm looking at the harvest coming now. Of dispensary like you, I can give the opportunity to my farmer to grow genetic that is not common, the old stuff that they have hidden in their closet. But there is the stress of not being able to move while
Right.
they have like it's treasure stuff that they have up there. So between your support, my name, and trying to have the people understand that quality comes from the origin, it's because you have the emerald triangle and you have those old genetics that you are richer than anywhere in a world. Like the Emerald Triangle is the Bordeaux of cannabis. California, it's the France of cannabis. People don't have that vision and understanding of the legacy that there is in the Emerald Triangle. Dude, they are the most secretive people in the world, and they have a world reputation for quality. How do you manage that? You know what I mean? You have to be good.
Very much so.
Protecting them is super important for the future of the cannabis industry. You want to be relevant in the future, it's not by producing swag in quantity that you're going to be, because you want to produce swag in quantity. Well, there is producing countries that have been doing that illegally for millennium.
You're right.
Go and visit before you dare thinking that you can get headbutting those people at that level. It's like what you have here, it's a know-how and that genetic that is precious, and it's a legacy that can stand time.
Yeah, well, You've got a premium product, and you couldn't have picked a more premium operation in March and Ash. I'll tell you, it's just best group in town, and they're expanding. And we certainly encourage people who are looking for premium hashish to look for Frenchy Cannoli at your local March and Ash. No question.
I really appreciate the support, and it's supporting much more than me. It's like, it is interesting how little you are connected with the origin of a product. For us Europeans, if you experience something good with your mouth and your nose, those all the taste and smell, what's the first things you want to know? It's where it comes from.
Truth.
You know what I mean? Here we don't have that. Look at everything that is made from a flower. There is never any indication of the origin.
You're right. It's a beautiful thing. It's a beautiful thing.
I think people want to know where it comes from, because it's scary when you don't know where it comes from. Look at the food industry.
You're right.
You don't trust it.
Thank you so much, Frenchy Cannoli. Your time is just so valuable to us, and we're so excited to partner with you here at March and Ash. Continued success to you and your team and your farmers. You just work with just such a high-class operation, and we're excited for this collaboration.
Thanks a lot.
All the best to you.
See you soon.
Oh, please. We would love to have you in one of our shops. All the best.
Thank you so much, man. See you soon.
Bye-bye.